Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you, Daniel. Thank you so much again for doing this for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Megan. And hello, everyone. As Megan said, my name is Daniel, and I am a mechanical design engineer for ASSA ABLOY. And we will get into what a day in the life looks like. We're going to go ahead and start with my educational background. Can everyone see this okay? I guess you can't talk, but I assume you can. Um, so I graduated from UNC Charlotte with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering just a couple years ago in 2023. And it feels both like yesterday and like a lifetime ago. So not really sure how to feel about that yet. I did get a minor in mathematics. Definitely have to flex that when I can. And I did not have a concentration like motorsports or biomedical or anything. I just got the base mechanical engineering degree, which I would say is hard enough as it is. I did complete the co-op program, which if you're not familiar with that, it's a good way to get a lot of good work experience in your undergraduate program. And I actually started my undergraduate program back in 2016. So it took me about 7 years to get through it between taking time off and the co-op program. And the takeaway there is that, it doesn't really matter how long it takes you as long as you push through and make it. So as I alluded to with the co-op, I graduated with a full year of mechanical engineering work experience from that co-op program. I had a ton of other good work experience throughout high school, various restaurant jobs and physical labor jobs and internships, as well as some UNC Charlotte Senior Design Project leadership roles. I can't remember exactly how many positions I ended up applying to, but I would say it's somewhere 25 to 30, both through LinkedIn and through, individual company websites. And I was super blessed to receive a career opportunity through LinkedIn directly from the company, and I ended up with an offer letter the day before I graduated, which was probably the best graduation present I could have asked for. So that brings me to where I am now, which is working with ASSA ABLOY. So ASSA ABLOY, if you're not familiar, is a fairly large global company that works on quite a few different things. This particular division focuses on what we call entrance systems. So basically automatic storefront doors. We also do hospital doors, et cetera, but mainly doors. And I work in the Monroe facility, which is the North American headquarters for entrance systems. And we actually have the manufacturing facility that produces all of the doors for North America. So a typical day in the life, I actually work from home 2 days per week. As you can probably tell, I'm not in the office right now. I'm actually at my house, which is awesome. I currently have three active projects that are in various phases. One project just launched a handful of months ago. One is kind of on hold in the design and prototyping phase, and then I have another project that's actually nearing launch as we speak. And my average day is pretty all over the place, depending on what projects are at what phase and what timelines look like. Typically starts out with just, catching up and writing emails. And that again depends on what's going on. It could be no emails, which is a great day. Could be 20 emails, which might take up a lot of time. I'll have meetings with various different teams. Again, that depends on the day. Could have one meeting, could have five meetings. Typically not a whole lot, but it can be pretty busy depending on what's going on. I would say the vast majority of my job involves a lot of CAD work, which I personally like. And that's, one of the reasons I really enjoy my job is I get to do a lot of CAD work. But between CAD work, documentation, drawings, prototyping, and testing, I stay pretty busy. And I would say my role in particular is fairly unique in the sense that I basically get to see projects through from concept to production, whereas I feel like a lot of mechanical engineers kind of get placed in a more narrow field of view, kind of, at a specific phase of a project or something like that. I actually am pretty much responsible for the entire project, which is a blessing and a curse, I would say, but I enjoy it. So some key responsibilities and tasks that I have as a mechanical design engineer at ASSA ABLOY, like I kind of just mentioned, I'm pretty much responsible for the design, the complete development, the implementation, and the successful launch of products. And I primarily work on automatic swing doors. We're actually a fairly small R&D team for the entirety of North America. There's actually only three R&D engineers, and I am the only one for swing doors. So, like I said, it's a lot of responsibility. We do a lot with PDM and PLM integration. And if you're not familiar with that, that's product data management and product lifecycle management. Basically, a way to centralize and control all of the documentation related to a product. Um, that's been a big part of my job, and it's something we're actively working on as a company, trying to improve our product data management. I fluently integrate with global teams to develop and produce products. So I work quite literally with teams globally on a global scale. We are a Swedish company, so we work a lot with Sweden, with Switzerland. We do a lot of manufacturing in Canada, so I work with Canada quite often. And then a lot of our components are sourced through Suzhou in China. So we have a whole China team that does engineering and product or component sourcing for us. And then we also have a bunch of internal departments that I actively work with on each project, like sales and marketing, production, operational excellence, and just in general, communicate with colleagues, companies, and customers. I don't do a whole lot of customer facing stuff, but it does happen. So I know I'm kind of flying through this. I don't want to take up too much time with this presentation, but some advice for soon-to-be grads. I'm not entirely sure where you all are at with your educational journey, but this advice will apply to everyone. So work experience doesn't really matter what it is, it's valuable. So never be afraid to put work experience on your resume just because you think it may not be valuable. It doesn't matter if you were a dishwasher at a restaurant or you worked at Auto Bell. That's, really good to have on your resume. And of course, if you have stuff that's more relevant, don't put working at Auto Bell over like a nice co-op or an internship or something. But work experience is valuable no matter what. On that same note, a professional and well thought out resume goes a very, very long way. I've had the pleasure of going to the UNC Charlotte Career Fair the last 3 years or so with ASSA ABLOY. So I've seen a bunch of different resumes, and I can tell you firsthand that a good professional resume is leaps and bounds above one that's not as well thought out. Networking is extremely important, especially in today's day and age. Never be afraid to reach out to someone on LinkedIn. So a good example of that would be, let's say you're applying to a job online, you've never met anyone from this company, you're not familiar with the company much at all. Find someone on LinkedIn that works for that company, or if you have access to the hiring manager's information, reach out to them and make a connection that way. It's a really good way to kind of make yourself stand out. And of course, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I guess we can talk about that at the end. Career fairs are extremely important, and all of you are extremely lucky to have access to the UNC Charlotte Career Fair and the STEM Fair and Engineering Picnic and all of that. Those are super, super good resources for connecting with employers and finding potential employment. It's a lot better to be able to go and speak to a company in person versus just blindly applying online or even reaching out on LinkedIn. So definitely take advantage of that while you're in school. And I think they're still available to you as an alumni. So definitely a good resource. And of course, apply to all the jobs. I know it seems overwhelming for sure, and it is. But unfortunately, the job market is pretty saturated, especially depending on, what career you're going into. So you will have to apply to quite a few jobs. And I would say don't necessarily get like married or attached to one specific job. It's good to be excited, but understand that you're probably going to have to apply to quite a few. It's just part of the process. So on that same note with job hunting, the job market is unforgiving. Um, Making a personal connection is huge. And whether that's through LinkedIn or at a career fair, give them something to remember you by. So, like I said, I've done a handful of career fairs, and I definitely remember those that make a really good impression and that stand out. So it's definitely worth making that personal connection. And of course, like I said, I wasn't kidding when I said apply to all the jobs. Just keep applying and applying. One big point I would like to make that I feel like a lot of people don't really consider, that I definitely didn't really think about too much coming out of school, was do not go chasing compensation immediately out of school. So, everyone wants to graduate and make $1 million a year, but that's unfortunately not all there is to it. there's a lot more than just how much you make. So you've got benefits, commute time, work-life balance, overall, stress levels, et cetera. So it's definitely, worth considering all the other factors that go into a job. Little anecdote on that. One of my good friends um, got a really good job out of school. It was a job from, I think he had done an internship with them for a couple of years and he enjoyed it. But, he started working full time for them and he was overworked, working 50, 60 hours a week and really did not like his management. And it was an hour commute. He was making really good money, but he wasn't happy. And meanwhile, I was making less money, but working from home, had a much more relaxed pace, um, you know, better commute, et cetera. So money is not everything, and you will definitely learn that at one point. So some valuable skills that will take you far in your career. Um, Communication is huge. So the ability to communicate effectively with different departments and companies and customers is very important. Organization kind of goes without saying. Preparedness, always take some time to be prepared for whatever you're getting into. For example, this presentation, I spent a good amount of time, making this PowerPoint and kind of reviewing it and going over it. So I'm not just blindly going into something. Professionalism definitely goes a long way. So how you interact with people, how you actually communicate via email, et cetera. Um, it's important to have a purpose with everything that you do, but don't be overconfident or cocky. So, don't go into something kind of one foot in, one foot out. Definitely, have intention with whatever you do. Take ownership with your work. You are going to make mistakes. And if you haven't learned that already, you've got a storm coming. You're definitely going to learn that at some point. So embrace your mistakes and grow from them. That's really all you can do. Be humble, have some humility. I think, it seems like you might know a lot coming out of school, but as soon as you get into that career role, you're really gonna realize how much you don't know. So like you don't know what you don't know, which is something I've struggled with, but don't act like you know it all because you never truly will. And take initiative. You are responsible for your success. And I know that kind of sounded, geez, that sounds kind of redundant, but at the end of the day, like you can't really lean on or rely on something or someone else for your success. It all comes back to you. Few final words here. Firstly, congratulations to all of you for making it this far. A lot of people don't, so it is definitely an accomplishment worth celebrating. It's okay to be nervous. That usually means you actually care, right? So if you're not stressed out about something or you just don't really care about something, like, you know, it's okay to be nervous. Getting that first job, I would say, is the hardest part. And once your foot is in the door, it gets a lot easier. But it's not over, when you get that first job. It's really only just beginning. At that point, it's time to prove yourself. But the sky is the limit, and you are responsible for your success. And lastly, perseverance pays off. So, don't get your like don't get too caught up in the mundane. Just, keep pushing forward and eventually it will pay off. So keep your head up. And I think that's it. So I know that was a lot of talking, a lot of words. I'm happy to go back to any point in that PowerPoint and talk more about it, but I think at this point we can open the floor to some questions if anyone has any specifics.
Hi, I have a question.
Hi. Yes.
My name's Kaini, by the way, but I was wondering, did you always know that you wanted to be a design engineer, or did you somewhat find it while you were at Charlotte?
That is a good question. I started school at University of South Carolina. And going into school, like I kind of always had an idea that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, but if you're not super familiar with engineering, it's extremely broad. So I had no idea really where that was going to take me, but I kind of always just had a natural inclination to tinker with stuff, and I was always interested in how stuff works. So I kind of always wanted to be an engineer, but the actual mechanical design engineer part kind of came with the role, I guess. So I was open to just about anything under the sun. But like I said, mechanical engineering is extremely broad, so it can be difficult to like know exactly where you want to go. But I guess to help answer your question a little more, being at UNC Charlotte definitely did help shape that decision for me too. Samari, you have your hand up?
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for this presentation. I really appreciate it. I CAD design is like what got me into becoming a mechanical engineer. I did a little bit experimenting with it in high school. I was like, oh, okay, I really like this. And I've done a lot of stuff with it so far in college, like certain groups or clubs I'm a part of, or I'm a TA for one of the freshman engineering CAD classes right now. So I had two questions. One, what are some good companies that would like have internships for like mechanical design engineers, like kind of job that you're doing? And then my second question would be, how can I make all of these like I guess experiences I've had stand out?
Definitely some good questions there. As far as what specific companies, I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I would say, like I said, it's probably a little more rare that one mechanical engineer will have like as wide of a net of responsibility as I do. Um, so off the top of my head, I'm not entirely familiar with a company, but we do offer internships at my company. If you want to check us out, I think we're pretty much done with that process for this year, but you can always check in on our website and look for job openings as well. Um, so yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but the career fair is a really good way to find out, information like that, and you can talk to various companies about exactly what you want to do and see if you're a good fit for them. And as far as how to make yourself stand out with your CAD experience, it sounds like you do have a lot of really relevant experience. So I think it's just finding a good way to kind of cultivate that on your resume. Um, just the way you word things, the way you organize things can make a big difference. But I think you're well on your way for sure with that kind of experience. So good questions.
I'll
And I
just
don't,
interject
oh
real
yeah, go
quick,
ahead.
sorry. Samari, you can also schedule an appointment to meet with me, the career coach for engineering, to talk about internship opportunities. That's something that I can help students with. So you can schedule an appointment and hire a niner. And so you can just go to career.charlotte.edu. I'll put the link for that in the chat here in a second. And then you can schedule an appointment and we can talk about like how to find an internship, how to identify companies that would be looking for anything specific that you might have in mind. But absolutely, Daniel's also right about the career fairs that'll be coming up. The STEM career fair is early February. So you guys will be getting emails about that. But those events tend to happen early in the semester because that's when like recruiting tends to happen. So just kind of be on the lookout as we, coming into the holiday season, it gets a little bit quiet, but then as we enter into January and February, the recruiting will pick back up again. So just wanted to throw that out there.
No, thanks,
And
Megan.
as
Yeah, that's good information.
Kanika, I think you have your hand up again.
Yes, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are there any classes that you wish you took that weren't in your academic plan? Like maybe an additional CAD class or art class or something?
Um, any classes that I wish I took. Now, I know it's only been about 2.5 years since I graduated, but I don't exactly remember all of the offerings, but I will say, so I'm a big car guy. And I mentioned I didn't really do any concentrations. And that's just because I don't think that like the motorsports concentration exactly aligned with what I wanted to do. But I wish I had taken more automotive classes just for my own personal interest. I did, however, take advanced CAD, which I don't think is on the curriculum. I know they've kind of changed it a little bit since I was there, but that was a very useful class, and especially since I really like doing CAD. Um, but no, I would say, definitely take some time to like do things that you actually want to do, even if it's not for your career specifically. If you really want to take like an automotive class or an art class or a photography class or something, do that because, it's a good opportunity to do it and you won't, necessarily get that opportunity again. And yeah, it
Thank
looks
you
like,
so much.
yeah, you're welcome. I was just gonna say, it looks like Megan put my LinkedIn in the chat. Um, and yeah, definitely remind me that we spoke, and feel free to ask any sort of question there too. If you don't feel like asking it right here in the group. Looks like Michael's got his hand up.
Hi, thank you very much. I was wondering, uh, industry-wide or shop talk, does it matter if your degree is a technology degree versus just a pure engineering degree as to the available
I think you got muted there, so sorry.
opportunities? Does the actual nomenclature of your degree matter?
Well, okay, so I have a fairly limited like breadth of experience to speak on that, I would say. Um, I'm not as like I do have involvement with the career fair and everything, but I'm not really like a hiring manager or like part of HR or anything. Um, from my personal experience and from what I've seen, it can, but not necessarily. I mean, I think an MET is just as capable as an ME, if not, better suited for some roles, maybe as well. I think some METs have a lot more hands-on experience than MEs do, and depending on what the company is looking for, that could be more advantageous. So I guess, long story short, it may not matter. It might, depending on how specific of a role it is. But are you asking as an MET?
I'm actually in the electromechanical engineering technologies, which is kind of
Oh,
a
nice.
new program and cohort. And follow-up question to that, how much of your mechanical work actually involves electrical controls and things like that?
Um, I would probably say none, to be honest. I mean, I don't actually design any electrical stuff. We have kind of an electromechanical engineer on staff that does a lot of that work, and then a lot of that is actually done in Sweden. Um, but I mean, I do some very basic stuff with that every once in a while, but I don't do like circuit board design or anything like that. But not saying that that's out of the question as an ME. You definitely
Well,
could get involved.
sure, more about sensors and feedback controls.
Yeah, no, I don't really do much with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question that I hear, I feel like I get a decent amount when I'm meeting with students. Um, did you ever feel like, Daniel, that you had sort of like imposter syndrome when you started either your co-op or your full-time position? This is something I think a lot of students have a little bit of anxiety around is sort of like, okay, we've taken these classes and now I actually have to do this in real life. And that I think can be very nerve-wracking for people in engineering because it's a big deal, right? You're given a high level of responsibility, depending on discipline and that sort of thing. So, did you ever experience any of that imposter syndrome? And if so, I guess what helped you overcome it or mitigate it?
That is a really, really good question. And I actually thank you for putting the phrase to what I feel because that is actually a big thing that I've dealt with. Just never really called it imposter syndrome, I guess. But yes, I have definitely struggled with that. And it's really hard to kind of go through your educational journey, and I guess everything's kind of more structured and you're learning all this very technical, theoretical stuff, and then you get out in the real world and everything is completely different than anything you could have imagined. And you aren't constantly referencing thermodynamic tables and you're not constantly doing differential equations and everything. And you're kind of just like out here figuring stuff out. So yes, I have seriously questioned a lot of times if I really am an engineer. But I think at the end of the day, you know, in my opinion, one of the biggest takeaways from your undergraduate career is the ability to learn. And I think, you're not going to be more than likely, I guess. There are definitely roles that you're going to be doing some crazy calculations and simulations and everything. But in general, I think, you're kind of going to move more away from the academic side of things and more into the practical, physical side of things, which is vastly different. Um, so even to this day, there are times where I really don't feel like an engineer, but um, I think you will redefine what that means as you go. So I don't know if that helped a lot, but yeah, it's definitely something I struggle with.
Yeah, I think it's even just helpful for them to hear that even a full-time engineer who's been out for a few years now, you know, it sort of normalizes it, I think. So yeah, thank you. Samari, you have
Gotcha.
your hand up again.
Yes, I was just gonna ask, what would be your like main, I'd say like one or two relevant courses that you actually apply to your like everyday life as an engineer, or that are most important as an engineer?
That is a good question. I'm going to try to rack my brain and remember all the courses that I took. Um, hmm. I mean, so like I said, I do a lot of CAD design or CAD work. So definitely the CAD classes helped with that. And then honestly, I think one of the most useful classes that I took in all of undergrad was machine analysis and design, which I'm not sure if that's still offered or if it might be a little different now or something. But that was one of the most like practical applications of stuff that we learned in undergrad. And I mean, it's a very good representation of the real world. Trying to think of what else. I guess was the design classes. So specifically senior design. I think that actually is probably the most important or most relatable course. And it's actually kind of eerie how well it translates into real life. I mean, it's a really good taste of what a career role would actually look like, or what an actual like engineering project might look like. So yeah, I would say senior design. I mean, obviously junior design and sophomore design are good too, and then machine analysis and design, and then the both the intro CAD class and the advanced CAD for my specific.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions, guys? Don't be shy. This is your chance to ask it.
Yeah, and like I said, if you feel too pressured or something, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to talk with you there.
I have a question. Because you said you had been to a couple of the, sounds like career fairs or the STEM fair, representing your company, and you said that there have been times when students have stood out to you. What were maybe some of the things that that student or students did that made you remember them among hundreds of students that you would have seen that day?
Right, that's a really good question. And yeah, it can be in the hundreds. So I would say the biggest things are presentation. Actually, let me go back a couple slides to my valuable skills here. Um, yeah, I guess presentation slash professionalism is big, just how you carry yourself, how you're dressed. As cliche as that sounds, it is important. And definitely preparedness and organization. So have you done any research into the company? I've had people approach me and ask questions that I don't even have the answer to, or, they've clearly done so much research into the company or whatever that I don't really know how to respond. And that's very impressive. even if it's, I mean, seriously, as basic as just Googling some information about the company, being able to relate to the person you're talking to is a big thing, and that'll definitely help them remember you. Um, and I guess what else was I gonna say? Yeah, really just carrying yourself well, being confident, and being prepared. And then of course, like having a good resume is important because the physical interaction is super important, but as soon as, the day wraps up, like, I've talked to 100 people and I will probably remember some details about you, but after that, it's really your resume that's carrying you from that point on. So making sure that is well done is definitely important. And as ridiculous as it sounds, printing your resume on fancy paper actually really helps because no one does that, and it actually literally stands out in a stack of resumes and will, you know, might sway someone's decision a little bit.
Last chance for questions, guys.
And I guess I'll throw in something else. I was not an all-star student by any means. I was not a 4.0 GPA, like overachiever, like in all the clubs and doing all the things. I was pretty average. I think I graduated with a 3.1. And I did transfer, so that screwed up a lot of stuff for me. Um, But I would say I have a good work ethic. I communicate well. I'm professional. Those kind of qualities, like these skills that I have listed here, are arguably more important than your academic success because, what's on paper is one thing, but actually being able to work well with other people and communicate well and learn and be hands-on and take that initiative, in my opinion, that's more important and more valuable than what GPA you had.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that advice, and I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Daniel, for your time today and for your insight. That I think coming from you, somebody who's been in their shoes and now you've, found success, I think it translates much better and conveys to the students way more than anything I could ever say to them. So thank you so much. And thank you guys, students, for being here today. Please continue to attend events like this. And I'm gonna put Daniel's LinkedIn again in the chat because we had a few people pop in, I think, after I sent that over. So I will put that into the chat. He has graciously invited you guys to connect with him on LinkedIn. So feel free to do that. And I was encouraging all of you to when you reach out to him on LinkedIn, put it in your note that you were part of the meetup today. And yeah, thanks again, Daniel. And hopefully we can have you back in the future.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming out and good luck to everyone and stay strong, keep your head up.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Take care.